You ever meet someone who's so broke it hurts just watching them live? That was Moan, a man who had nothing but a tiny cracked house and a stomach that was always a little too empty. But somehow his heart, that was bigger than all of it. Way bigger. People say kindness costs nothing, but for Moan it was the one thing he gave away, even when there wasn't anything left to give. Every day, Moan woke before dawn. The sun hadn't even cracked the sky, and he was already out in the fields, working his fingers raw, just to make sure there'd be a little food on the table for his wife Sunita and himself. Nothing fancy, no promises of a better life, just work, sweat, and hoping the rain wouldn't fail them. But here's the thing, while most would clutch tight to every crumb, Moan did the opposite. If a stray dog wandered by, shivering and starving, he'd break off a piece of his lunch and hand it over without a second thought. If a weary traveler knocked on his door, eyes full of hunger, Moan wouldn't hesitate to share what little he had. His wife, Sunita, wasn't blind to this. She'd roll her eyes, mutter under her breath, and sometimes snap, "You're going to starve us all with this madness." But Moan just smiled, the kind of tired, gentle smile that said, "I have to do this. I have no choice." Because for Moan, kindness wasn't a luxury. It was everything. Sunita wasn't just frustrated. She was scared. Every day watching Moan give away their last morsels felt like watching their future slip through her fingers. "Moan, do you even hear yourself?" she'd snap, voice cracking with worry. "If we don't eat, if we keep giving everything away, what happens to us? What happens to our children someday?" She wasn't angry because she didn't care. No, Sunita was the one trying to hold on to whatever scraps of safety they had. She'd seen hunger's claws before, and she wasn't about to let it take them down again. But Moan. He looked at her like she was asking him to choose between his heart and his family. And he couldn't. Not really. "You don't get it, Sunita," he'd say softly, trying not to raise his voice. "I don't want us to be empty, but if I see someone starving outside this door, if I don't help, what kind of man does that make me? What kind of life is that?" Their arguments would stretch on, words flying sharp and quick like a storm. She'd accuse him of being foolish, reckless. He'd say he was just trying to be human. But underneath all the fighting, there was this silent thing neither of them said, the fear that one day, maybe, their kindness might break them instead of build them. Still, Moan kept giving. And Sunita kept watching, heart tight in her chest, wondering if love alone could keep them afloat in a world that seemed determined to drown them. One evening, just when the sun was dipping below the horizon, a figure stumbled up to their door. Old, worn out, clothes tattered like they'd seen too many storms. His eyes were sunken, face shadowed by exhaustion and hunger. Moan saw him and didn't hesitate. Without a second thought, he opened the door. "Please," the man whispered, voice barely more than a rasp. "I haven't eaten in days." Sunita was already shaking her head, her patience snapped in two. "Not again, Moan," she hissed under her breath, her frustration pouring out. "We have nothing left. This is madness." But Moan's eyes never left the stranger. His heart, bigger than his stomach, pushed him forward. "Come in," he said simply. "Sit. Rest. I'll bring you some food." Sunita's voice cracked with desperation. "You can't keep doing this. What about us? What about tomorrow? We barely survive as it is." But Moan was past arguing. In that moment, it wasn't about tomorrow or even them anymore. It was about a man who was starving right in front of them. It was the breaking point. Moan's kindness wasn't just tested. It was stretched tight, hanging by a thread. Would he finally fold under the weight of survival? Or would he prove that some things, some people are worth risking everything for? Moan stood in the tiny kitchen, staring at the last two dry rotis sitting on the plate. His lunch. That was it. Nothing more. No hidden stash, no secret saving. Just two simple pieces of bread. He could hear Sunita's voice in his head, sharp and urgent. "What are you doing?" "That's all we have." But Mohan's heart was louder. Slowly, without hesitation, he picked up the rotis and walked back to the stranger sitting quietly by the door. The air was thick with tension. Sunita watching, her eyes wide with disbelief, the stranger too weak to even speak. "Please," Mohan said softly, "eat this." "It's all we have." The old man looked up, surprised but grateful. He took the rotis carefully, like they were more precious than gold. He ate slowly, with quiet respect, each bite savoring not just the food, but the kindness behind it. The room was silent except for the soft sound of chewing. In that silence, something passed between them, a moment heavier than words. It wasn't just about hunger anymore. It was about trust, about believing that in a world so quick to turn away, some people still see the pain and choose to act. Moan watched the stranger finish, feeling something stir deep inside. A fragile hope that goodness wasn't lost, that maybe, just maybe, kindness had a way of coming back around. And somewhere, beyond the walls of that little house, a promise was being made, not spoken aloud, but held tight in hearts that dared to believe. The stranger sat quietly for a long moment after finishing the rotis. Then, with a slow breath, he reached into his worn bag and pulled out something heavy and wrapped in cloth. Moan's eyes widened as the cloth slipped away to reveal a golden bowl, shining like sunlight trapped in metal. "Take this," the stranger said, his voice steady but kind. "It's not just a gift. It's a reminder." Moan stared, shaking his head. "I can't. This belongs to you." "No," the man replied, a faint smile breaking through his tired face. "A king gave me this long ago, but I never needed it. I've been searching for someone worthy, someone who helps without expecting anything back." Moan's hands trembled. How could he accept something so valuable when he had given away everything he had? But the stranger's eyes held a quiet certainty. "Listen," he said gently. "Kindness isn't about reward. It's about doing what's right, even when it costs you. The universe, God, karma, whatever you believe, never forgets. It sees the sacrifices, the silent good deeds. You helped a stranger today without hope for return. That's the real treasure." Moan looked down at the bowl, the weight of those words sinking in. This wasn't just gold. It was proof that goodness has a way of coming back when you least expect it. The stranger stood, ready to leave, but the gift stayed with Moan, shining bright, a symbol that sometimes, when you give everything, the world gives back in ways you can't imagine. Moan stood at the doorstep, the golden bowl heavy in his hands, watching the stranger disappear into the fading light. The tears he'd been holding back spilled over, not from sadness, but from something deeper. Relief, gratitude, and a fierce kind of hope that felt like it might just lift him out of all the struggle. He thought about everything. How hard life had been, how many times he'd given away what little he had, even when it scared him. He thought about Sunita's worries, the hunger, the endless work, and that quiet voice inside him that kept saying, "Keep giving, keep believing." And in that moment, Moan made a silent promise. No matter how hard the world tried to beat him down, no matter how empty his hands might feel, he would never stop being kind. Not for rewards, not for praise, but because it was the only way he knew to live. Because true religion, Moan realized, isn't about rituals or gold or grand gestures. It's about the small acts of goodness, the ones no one sees, the ones that don't come with applause but change the world anyway. He tucked the bowl carefully away, a symbol not of wealth, but of faith. Faith that kindness circles back, that good will find a way, that when you give with an open heart, The universe listens. And with that, Moan stepped back inside his little home, ready to face whatever came next, because he knew now, deep down, that living with kindness was the greatest strength he had.